It is a very interesting time for India's aviation sector. The Indian aviation sector looks set to soar to new heights.
The airline business is not about a $1 billion idea. The airline business is about $1 billion $1 ideas. Low cost has nothing to do with low quality. You can be ferociously low cost, but you can churn out a very high quality product.
You helped ordering 100 aircrafts when you were 29. Tell us about the negotiation process.
One must remember that when you're ordering airplanes, it is not a one-time transaction. There is a long-term relationship. Our two biggest risks are not GDP growth, fuel price. Two biggest risks are complacency and arrogance.
What was your learning from your first job?
My first job was selling credit cards. So I remember a person who I was trying to sell this credit card was obviously a very wealthy person. She was just extremely rude. I remember feeling very small. A little promise that I made to myself was that when I am in that position of power, then I should not make someone feel small.
There are multiple strategies like all female staff in order to lose weights.
No, that's not true at all. A third of the leadership team was women. Now, there is, of course, a criticism to it. The criticism to it is that's very sexist.
We would have loved to learn from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala sir. What made him special?
Rakesh used to ask all the time is, what are we doing about the mental health of our employees?
What's the cheapest way to book a air flight ticket? Greetings everyone. My name is Shivang and this is a series where we host people who have built India's most prominent institutions. The initiative is to make entrepreneurship real for any 22-year-old out there like me. And today we have the Dwane Johnson of Indian businesses, the man behind India's one of the largest airline and another India's youngest airline. At the age of 29, he ordered his first set of 100 aircrafts. He's on the board of Ashoka, Fabindia, Green Mobility. He also served as the CEO at Oyo Group. He's an angel investor, a philanthropist, a restaurateur, and of course, a foodie. Super excited to do this. Thanks a lot for doing this, sir.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
So,
I'm going to remember the Dwane Johnson of Indian business.
oh my God.
I don't think I've ever been introduced like that. Although some people have called me that, but I don't think I've ever been introduced like that.
Do you like it?
I like it. I love it.
Do you follow him?
Yeah, actually I do. I think he's just, from whatever, you see of him, he just seems to be such a genuine human being, and just such a nice person, generous, charitable, and connects with people, down to earth, and obviously works out a lot and likes to eat.
Yeah.
No, I have a lot of respect for him. Yeah.
And he's a great businessman too. I was reading, yeah.
Of course, absolutely.
But tell me one thing. So, जो lawyers होते हैं ना, they don't have fear of anything, right? And tell me, did you experience that fearlessness while you were studying law?
नहीं ऐसा नहीं है. I don't think I've ever feared anything, to be honest. My only fear is of losing my loved ones. I don't have any other fear. I never had. I don't have a fear of pain or death or anything of that sort. I have a fear only of losing loved ones. But when I was studying law, by that time I'd already got into this mode of studying things that I like, right? Abhi aapne mujhe pucha na ki whether I listen to podcasts, right? And I told you ki, I don't listen to too many business podcasts, right? If someone sends me something interesting, of course I'll listen to it, etc. But मुझे बड़ा वो history में interest है. So therefore, for me, the podcast that I listen to regularly is Empire, right. Which is William Dalrymple and Anita Anand podcast on the British Empire, right? And the impact on India and other parts of the world, right? And lots of things. And you'll be surprised that I listen to it while jogging. I listen to it while working out. So it's not that, you need to listen to this sort of some very intense heavy metal while working out or anything of that sort. So back to what you were asking me, that I don't know whether I've felt a sense of fearlessness, but when I was studying law, I found it very interesting, especially when you're in the first year. And this I'm going back to when I was studying in Delhi University. In the first year, you study very interesting things. You study constitutional law. You study criminal law. You study tort. You study evidence. So things which are, which one can relate to.
Right.
आप कोई case study पढ़ते हैं तो it's like a story, right? So you relate to it. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Tell me your craziest memory of Kirori days.
For lots of them, yeah. And I had a great time at Kirori in Delhi University. See, one has to understand that unlike Ashoka or Plaksha, in Delhi University, especially the North Campus, is a very interesting place because there are 6-7 colleges which are right next to each other. You have the postgraduate students, you have the PhD students, you have various faculties, all kind of
Coming together.
stuck next to each other. And at least in those days, the campuses were very porous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would get off the bus in front of the Delhi School of Economics, go to the Delhi School of Economics canteen. Breakfast was there. Then, piche se, you would go through Faculty of Management Studies. You would cross the road and go to, Kirori. You would get out of the back gate and you are then in Kamla Nagar. And if one of my professors, he used to teach both at Kirori as well as in Hansraj. So you would go to Hansraj. I had friends in Hindu College and St. Stephen's. So the point I'm trying to make is that one of the best memories is of knowing people from different colleges, from different backgrounds, regional backgrounds, language backgrounds, and of course academic backgrounds. I had friends who were doing, at any point of time, like saath mein baith ke canteen mein you're chit-chatting, you have friends from different colleges. Somebody studying physics, somebody studying Hindi, somebody studying economics, somebody studying history, political science, and we're all together. We all have common interests. So the guy who is a brilliant student at physics is also a poet, and a guy who's studying history may be interested in theatre. So my favorite memory of Kirori was this ability to have multiple friends from multiple backgrounds.
कोई ऐसा particular incident याद है that had a huge impression on you?
I think not as such one particular incident, but the fact that in those days at Kirori and especially Kirori, it was a very heady time because people like this band called Parikrama. They are on one side of the auditorium. The theatre group is on the other side of the auditorium. Mahalakshmi Iyer, she used to be the president of Hindi Music. The Amit Kilam, who is now the percussionist and at Indian Ocean. Amit was 1 year my senior. So it was like just this amazing time to see so much different cultural diversity, so many different interests. So I think that is those are some of the things.
So I was talking to your chief of staff before this, and she was telling what are the things that she learned from you, and she mentioned that you're a people's person, dropping people out to the gate, making sure that everybody is comfortable around you. And you've learned that over the years, reading all those books. But your first job with Mr. Jyoti Sagar as a CA, What did you learn? Do you remember any blunder that you made which taught you? Do you remember anything when he scolded you, or what was your learning from your first job while your time?
My first job was actually even before that. My first job for only 2 months. My first job was selling credit cards. And convincing people to buy credit cards. And that was literally, calling people up, cold calling people up, and trying to convince them to enroll into a credit card.
How old were you?
I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah, 22. I was 22, just shy of 22 actually.
At my age, yeah.
Yeah, 21, 22. Yeah, and then going to a meeting, trying to convince somebody to enroll into a credit card program. So literally just like, you get
door-to-door sales.
Yeah, pretty much door-to-door sales, absolutely. And before that, even that, I did a job for 3-4 days before I got into this credit card selling thing. For 3 to 4 days, I literally did door-to-door selling. And we were selling, I don't know, some kind of an electric shaver and whatnot. And it was literally going from door to door. So the trick was that, okay, you went on the top floor of a building and came down the stairs and go, so that, you're not climbing the stairs, you're coming down the stairs. Eating under a tree. But to be fair, I did that only for 3-4 days. Then I did this credit card selling business. So I remember going to one meeting, and the person who I was trying to sell this credit card to was obviously a very wealthy person. He was an exporter of some kind, and he was just extremely rude, and he was just very demeaning and all of that. And I remember feeling very I remember feeling very small, and I was and he said something like, "I'll call your boss and I'll get you fired." And it's not like I would have not been able to put food on my table if I did get fired, but it made me feel very small, right? And I still remember that, because a little promise that I made to myself was that when I am in that kind of a position of power, then I should not make someone feel small and disrespected, right? Then, for example, I was extremely fortunate that Mr. Sagar gave me the opportunity to come in as an intern at the law firm. And when I came in, my first boss was actually Mr. Sagar's associate and partner called Mr. Rajinder Kumar. RK used to be the head of the trademarks sort of practice at the intellectual property law firm, which is where I started off as an intern. And I was obviously the youngest kid over there, still a law student. But when you talk about blunder, I started my internship in the month of May, on the 11th of May, and this is in 1998. By the month of August, I was working hard, and I had a very physically straining life, because I would wake up early in the morning, walk a little bit, take 2 buses, then walk a bit, and then get to the office, and then in the evening walk back, take a bus, go to evening classes of law, because by that time I had shifted to the evening classes, and then kind of walk all the way, and then again take 2 buses at night and reach back home at 11 o'clock at night. So physically, while it was there, I had also become complacent. And, it was this newfound thing of having a job, even though as an intern, but having a job. And I would spend time talking on the phone. I would spend time. I just started slacking, and this was in the month of August. So May, June, July, August, within 4 months. And I remember RK calling me and sitting me down, and he says, what are you doing? So I didn't understand what he meant, and then he pointed out to me that I was slacking, and he was just the kindest boss. He would not scream, he would not shout, he would not raise his voice. But he said this in all seriousness, and he pointed out to me and reminded me that
You're slacking, box.
You're slacking, and remember the opportunity that you have. And I think that was such a wake-up call. And that was, 1998, 25 years ago. And I think I'm ever grateful that I got that wake-up call. So even today, when I begin to slack, when I begin to feel that I'm getting complacent, I have to pull myself back up. I have to remember that how grateful I should be for the opportunities that I have today. And I think that over a period of time has meant that when I'm often asked as to what motivates me, and I always say 3 things, but the first thing that I say is that what motivates me is a sense of fear. And that fear is not in that traditional sense, but that fear in the gut that you should not screw up this opportunity. You should not lose this opportunity, right? And because it's just by accident or fate that we've got this opportunity. So don't take it easy. And likewise, I always say that we as human beings, as companies, as leaders, as organizations, our 2 biggest risks are not the US dollar, Indian rupee, GDP growth, fuel price, all of that. Our 2 biggest risks are complacency and arrogance. And I think this goes back to that time, where I think RK had that conversation with me 25 years back.
So when do you know that you're being complacent, and what do you do when you feel you're being complacent? How do you make yourself not being complacent?
I think we all know when we are complacent. I think we all know. You stop preparing enough. You hope that you're going to wing it. You think that this is it. I've learned enough. So really, to pull yourself out of that, one has to remember why you started, right? And it's not about making money. It's not about a medal. It's about trying to be the very best that you can be. Like, for example, some of the greatest players in the sporting world, whether it is a Sachin Tendulkar, whether it is a Roger Federer, whether it is a Tiger Woods, I suspect that when they're going in to play a tournament, they don't try any harder because the cash prize is larger.
Right.
I don't think when they go in and they're beginning to play the game, they're thinking that this one has $1 million cash prize and this one has a $500,000 cash prize. What they are doing is they just don't want to lose that opportunity. They want to put in their best. And it's not like they are broken if they lose the match. They just want to put in their best. And I think that's kind of, part of it. Yeah.
I just realized that we share only common fear of losing our loved ones. What do you do about that fear? Once you realize, because, we sometimes we tend to realize that we have limited time. The people around us have limited time. There will be a day when we are going to lose them.
Yeah.
So how do you face that fear? What do you do about that fear?
Over a period of time, and I've evolved in this. It's not that that's the way it was originally. I've always been a people's person, as Georgina mentioned. I like to be around people. I like to be around family, friends, whatever. But I think the only thing is to maximize the time that you spend with them. And when I say maximize, it does not mean the volume.
Quality.
It's a quality. It's how present you are in that situation, right? So in the earlier days, I would be more distracted. I would be on the phone while I'm with somebody, right? And now I'd be like, okay, even if it is those 5 minutes, am I really, really present in those 5 minutes, right? And just, it sounds a little fatalistic, but live your life as if today would be the last day, right? So if you want to, call somebody, then don't wait for tomorrow, just call, If you want to send a message to your mother, just do it now, right? If you want to, speak to that friend, sometimes, you're in a bus, you're in a metro, you're traveling somewhere, koi yaad aata hai, अरे यार उससे तो बहुत दिनों से नहीं मिले, right? That message कर दो यार, I was just thinking about you. I hope all are okay. And that's all it takes.
How did you meet the founders of Indigo?
So when I was at the law firm, NJ Sagar Associates, the parent company of Indigo, InterGlobe, was a big client of J. Sagar Associates, and I was one of the young lawyers working on that client, and that's how I first got introduced to Mr. Bhatia, and I think while he depended a lot on Mr. Sagar, the great thing about Rahul was that he, whenever I would interact with him, or I would work on something, something that I was supposed to work on, in my interactions with Rahul or any of his other colleagues in those days, gentlemen called Ashok Fan, Anil Parashar, they never made me feel like, who's this 22-year-old or 24-year-old, right? And that is a really big deal, right? Because, and when someone bestows that sense of faith and confidence in you, then you also try to put in your very best. So that's how I met Rahul. And then when Mr. Bhatia was thinking about an airline, and he had started having conversations with his longtime friend and later business partner, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. That's how I met Rakesh for the first time in December of 2002 in Bombay with Rahul. So that's how I first met Rahul and Rakesh. So Rahul, I met him when I was like 23, 24 years old, and I met Rakesh when I was 26, 27, 27. Yeah, so that's how.
And then they asked you to become the general counsel of InterGlobe.
Yes, a little bit later, I was looking at exploring my boundaries, not exploring an economic opportunity outside, in the sense that I was wanting to test myself that is it that I'm doing well in JSA because everybody has known me for a long period of time, everybody's very fond of me, very supportive, encouraging, and if I actually change the circumstances and if I was somewhere outside, would I do equally well, right? And when that happened, I I thought, I don't want to join another law firm because I was very loyal to JSA. So I was thinking the only other thing that I could do is join a company and sort of get a sense of if I'll be good enough or not. So I did an interview. I only did one interview, which was with GE's sort of financing arm. And I had a couple of 2-3 rounds of interviews, and I came back and I told Rahul, and he was like, I didn't know you're looking out. I said, yeah, well, I'm not really looking out, but I want to explore my own boundaries and how good I am. So then he said, then why don't you join us? And I said, I didn't know you were looking for someone. He says, what is there to this thing? I mean, you know us and then we know you. So then if you're anyway planning to join a company, then might as well join us. So that's how I joined InterGlobe as general counsel.
So no interviews?
No, yeah, that was it. And I remember Rahul took out a Post-it and put it in front of me and a pen. And he says, why don't you write down whatever you need? And that's how it was. It happened, and this is around the time that the discussions around some new airline. I mean, some airline. I mean, there wasn't any name to it or anything of that sort. And again, luck, fortune, whatever coincidence, circumstances that happened to be there at that time, and I was tasked with this job of applying for the license and so on and so forth. So that's how the sort of involvement is.
So before the Airline business, before Indigo, what was the business of InterGlobe?
Lots of different things. Primarily airline representation. So therefore, a lot of international airlines would be represented and by InterGlobe in India. So Virgin Atlantic, United Airlines, you had, a bunch of different airlines, and KLM, and so there are about 15, 16 airlines, and so they're a very good sense of the travel market and so on and so forth. South African Airways, and they were doing some really cutting edge work in trying to increase the presence and the foothold of these airlines in this market, sell those destinations as possible travel destinations for India. Then there was a travel technology distribution business with Galileo. There was a travel technology development business. So all in and around the travel services, space.
How old were you when you were tasked with the opportunity to lead Indigo?
Oh, that happened later. That happened in 2008. So I was just shy of 33. So I was 32, 33 years old at that time when I was, by that time Indigo had already started. And like I said, I was involved in the sort of one of the people who was involved in the launch of Indigo, all the way from getting involved in the license to the ordering the airplanes and things like that. But please remember that never is anything a one-man person and one-man effort. And secondly, imagine me going from leading a few things which were more legal in nature and being an understudy in many other things, and then gradually sort of getting a sense of what is the airline business about, to beginning to recruit people and so on and so forth. So fast forward to 2006 when the airline took to the skies. I was tasked as the person to lead the entry into service, and then a couple of years later, in 2008, summer of 2008, when I was 32, 33, is when I was given this role of leading Indigo as the president of Indigo.
We'll double click on that. But before that, you helped ordering 100 aircrafts when you were 29.
That's right. I was part of that list. Yeah.
Tell us about the negotiation process. Not on that particular deal, but over the years of, while ordering lot of planes. So, जब हम कोई भी चीज खरीदते हैं, so there are ticks and tracks to the game. You try to walk off, and then the seller tries, okay, मत जाओ, come में ले लो. What are some tricks while negotiating for a big deal like ordering of 100, 200, 300 planes?
Well, I've learned from being able to closely observe people like Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, and I think really the very first thing is that one must remember that when you're ordering airplanes, it is not a one-time transaction. There's a long-term relationship. It's not like you buy a car and then you just keep trying to drive down the price of the car, and then you just you're trying to really squeeze the most out of it. Here, these airplanes will come over for a long period of time. Secondly, there will be a maintenance agreement that will be there for a long period of time. So when that happens, then you have to make sure that the seller also sees value in the deal. If they're going to keep losing money on the deal, why would they? After a while, they stop supporting you. Second, so therefore, it's important that you have to leave something behind on the table. This is not a game where you're trying to maximize every freebie out of it. The second is that you cannot bluff. This is not like buying a pair of shorts or a t-shirt in Sarojini Nagar market that you walk away, try to bluff and you try to bluff, and then you come back and say, "Chacha, theek hai." If you bluff once and you get caught, or you lie, "Oh, I've got a term sheet from somebody else," sometimes you might get away. But if you get caught bluffing, lying, then your credibility of negotiation goes away completely, right? Because you're not going to order planes only once. You're going to order planes many times, and they'll remember that this guy he bluffs. Just call his bluff, right? The third is that these are very complex transactions, so you have to really understand what are all the moving parts to this negotiation. You have to also understand what is the cost structure of the other side as well. Where is it that they might have some leeway? Where is it that they're saying, "Look, this is it," and you got to respect that. I think it's some of these things. And also in these kind of negotiations with the airplane manufacturer, you're only negotiating the fuselage and the wings, and you're negotiating for the engines with someone else, and you're negotiating for the landing gear with someone else, and you're negotiating for the seats with someone else, and you're negotiating with the seat belts with someone else, and you're negotiating with the carpet with someone else. So at any given point of time, in that time, this is I'm talking about 2005-06 time frame, there must have been, if there were, let's say, 20 items, from the paint to the carpet to the seat belt to the seats to the avionics to the landing gear to the wheels to the tires, and so on and so forth, the APU and this, that, and the other. Even if there were 20 items, and even if each one of them had 3 or 4 vendors, you're doing 80 different negotiations at the same time, right? So I think that was really again fortunate that at a very early age I was able to get that sort of involvement, ringside view, whatever you want to call it. I think that was very important.
एक कार जब हम खरीदते हैं तो सारी OEMs और वो सब वर्टिकल इंटीग्रेटेड करके एक मारुति सुजुकी या कोई भी कंपनी जब बेचती है सब कुछ बेचती है, लेकिन जब हम प्लेन खरीदते हैं तो why a plane company only sell the fuselage and the wings and stuff? Why need to?
Well, you can go and get the whole thing, but when you're ordering that number of airplanes, the simple answer to that question is that's the only way that you will be able to drive down the cost, right? Because after that, when two airlines start competing with each other, the airline which has that cost structure already built in, they can't undo the seat, right?
Right.
They can't undo this thing. They can turn the plane around faster. They can reduce salaries. They can get a better route. But the cost of that capital asset is already fixed, right? So you can't do anything now. For the next 10 years, you're stuck with that cost of the seat. You're stuck with the cost of the plane. You're stuck with the cost of the engine.
You mentioned it's always about ensuring not to ignore the other person's interest while optimizing for your own interests and leaving something on the table in order to, because there are only 2 or 3 airplane manufacturers in the industry and you have to be the long-term player and you have to make relationships, so you have to leave something on the table. Yeah. How do you optimize when you're doing a deal of, and it's a very complex deal, as you mentioned. You have sales and sell, and then you lease it to someone else, and then you lease back, and it's a very complex. But a negotiation of such a big deal, how does it happen? Can you break it down for us? So you email them. How is it? Is it D0?
It happens over a long period of time, right? It happens over many months, sometimes many years, and again, because airplanes are very scarce commodity, your ability to convince the manufacturer that you are somebody who's a serious player, somebody who's experienced, somebody who understands the nitty-gritty of the business is extremely important before you even get any attention from the manufacturer. Because suppose they commit a large airplane order with somebody who has no understanding of the business or who has not thought it well through. They don't want to get stuck with a bankrupt airline. So when an Airbus decides to sell airplanes to a paper airline like Indigo in 2005, or Boeing decides to sell and support a fledgling idea like Akasa, right? It is a huge compliment and it's a huge testament to how seriously they take this idea. And that means the details of the business plan, your understanding of the market, whether you have a management team that has experience and credibility, whether you understand all the pitfalls and challenges of the business, that this is not some valuation game. This is not just something that you just want to do it because it sounds like an interesting thing to do. And that's extremely important. Whereas in many other businesses, you can say, okay, I'm just going to try to start a bed cover business or whatever it is. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Here, these big partners, engine manufacturers, lessors, aircraft manufacturers, etc., equipment suppliers, they are your partners for a long period of time. So they have to be really, really convinced that you understand the idea, you have a management team, and you have the planning and the wherewithal to deliver on this.
Abhi kar sakte, you can, because people believe you. You have created a trust in the market that you have led the largest airline for a decade. And Akasa ke saath, you can pull off a great, with Akasa, helping Akasa, you can pull off a great deal. But us samay pe, how did the management convince all these players to?
Because of Mr. Kangwal and Mr. Bhatia. Mr. Kangwal had been the chairman CEO of US Airways. He had spent many years in Air France. He had spent many years in United Airlines. Mr. Bhatia and InterGlobe understood the travel market in India for decades together. So that's how.
Tell me one thing which you still remember learning from those two folks, which you still, want to propagate. What did you learn from Mr. Rakesh and the other co-founders of Indigo during that time?
Well, thousands of things. But I think if I had to pick just one from each, then Rahul's belief in the Indian market and the long-term, nature of the Indian market, how underpenetrated the Indian market was, how the regulatory framework was changing to encourage new airlines to come in, and how the consumer behavior, the behavior of the consumer traveler, travel consumer changing, that ability to vision India and sort of place a bet on India was from Rahul. And from Rakesh, it was the understanding of what really are the levers to the business. When you clear out all the noise and what people write about in newspapers and things like that, to really understand the details of how the airline works, what makes money, and being able to declutter the noise from the news is I think what I learned from Rakesh.
So Richard Branson says that if you want to be a millionaire, start with $1 billion and start an airline. Why does he say that? And how much do you believe or agree or disagree with this statement?
No, I mean it's a very cool thing to say, and of course very quoted. But that can apply to any business. If you start any business with a lot of money, but don't have the focus on what are the details of it, you can lose billions of dollars as a financial investor in the public markets. You can lose billions of dollars trying to run a call center. You can lose billions of dollars trying to manufacture a car. So really it comes down to the fact that in the airline business, there are lots of people who go bankrupt and who do not survive, but that's because they get distracted from what the consumer's needs are. Whether you can service those needs at a price that they can afford, and for you to be able to build a business at a price that they can afford, are your costs under control or not? So, but a lot of people get distracted with all the glamour of what color on the plane and what food to serve and things like that.
So my next question was to ask you, why does most airlines go bankrupt? But I believe that you kind of answered that. Yeah. But tell us, you spoke about bringing down the cost. We know about the fact that there are multiple strategies like all female staff in order to lose weight.
No, that's not true at all.
Okay.
That's not true at all.
So what's the reason? Because
it was just so that we can have more women employees. Indigo, when I took on the airline, as in the role that I took on, 18% of our workforce was women. When I left the airline, it was 43% of the workforce was women. A third of the leadership team was women. The highest percentage of women pilots in the world. The highest percentage of women airport managers. 30% of employees were managers and above were women. Now, there is, of course, a criticism to it. The criticism to it is that's very sexist, and that there could have been other ways to increase women's participation in the workforce. And there is some truth to that. And that's why when got a chance to do it the second time in Akasa, we not only have women flight attendants, we also have male flight attendants. But Akasa, in its first 18 months, we remember in Indigo, it took me 10 years to get to 43%. And Akasa, in the first 18 months, 37% of our workforce is women, right? The head of strategic relations is a woman. The head of HR is a woman. The head of customer experience is a woman. And the head of international operations expansion is a woman. And there are many, many, many such leaders. So it had nothing to do with this thing about weight and so on and so forth. It had more to do with how do you make sure that certain types of jobs or certain types of industries which were highly male dominated, how do you burst through that glass ceiling? And there is some right and wrongs to it. There are some pros and cons to it. Different people have different views, and that's why in Akasa it's both women and men. Hopefully, we will have non-binary genders as well. We have a gender-neutral uniform. So it's a constant push to break these stereotypes and barriers.
The reason I asked you because while researching, बहुत सारी केस स्टडीज मैंने पढ़ी इंडिगो और अकासा पे, और वहाँ पर बहुत रेप्यूटेड चैनल पे ना स्ट्रेटेजिकली बता रखा है कि they took all women for staff just to cut down on weights, और एक फ्लाइट पे इतने पैसे, अगर इतना वेट होता है तो इतने पैसे बचते हैं, and 365 days में कितने सारे पैसे बचेंगे. So that story is very important,
but taking weight off the airplane is an extremely important thing. But taking weight of the airplane does not have to do with what gender of flight attendants you have. Taking weight of the airplane is, do you have a fridge that you don't need to have? Do you have an oven that you don't need to have? Do you have extra water boilers that you don't need to have? Are you using a lighter paint? Are you using a lighter carpet? Are you using a lighter seat? Are you tankering fuel separately? It's that kind of stuff that is more important, and it's not glamorous, but it is what makes airlines money.
I tell you one most innovative, cost-cutting thing that you guys did in order to, bring down the cost, apart from buying everything separately, removing all those things that you were saying.
It's the airline business is not about a $1 billion idea. The airline business is about $1 billion $1 ideas. So you have to see, if I'm choosing a paint, is the paint lighter? If I'm flying the airplane, how much do I clean the airplane so that there is not enough deposit on the exterior so that it does not it does not create more drag as the airplane is flying? It is about making sure that there is not so much wastage of food. Cost consciousness is something that has to be ingrained. What kind of cars are you driving? What kind of hotels are you staying in? How fancy is your office, and so on and so forth? Do you have 10 check-in counters when you can do with 8 without compromising customer experience? Which basically means you have to look at the process very differently, right? And there are examples of this around the world. One of the lowest cost of production for a smartphone is Apple, right? So what is it that they do where they say we are able to charge such a premium? They're a $1 trillion company, but they don't lose that culture of being cost conscious, right? Okay. The late Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, RJ used to say, one of the things that he used to always look at when looking at a company to invest in, when backing founders, is frugality. And I've always said this, that low cost has nothing to do with low quality. Right. You can be ferociously low cost. You can be ferociously cost conscious, but you can churn out a very high quality product. The question really becomes, what is high quality, right? Is high quality chocolate mousse? Is high quality a 7-course meal? Is high quality a fancy coffee? Or is high quality being on time? Is high quality being the lowest number of cancellations? Is high quality being the cleanest aircraft? Is high quality being the friendliest staff? Is high quality being the easiest boarding process? Right? In the 2, 3, 4 hour range that we fly in. So this is our 4th month trending that Akasa is the most on-time airline in the country, right? And same was with Indigo for many years.
Right.
So it's important to see that, what do you attribute importance to? Where do you attribute importance? Because whatever you attribute importance to, jahan aapka focus jayega, that's where we as human beings will start focusing on more, right? It's like you're preparing for an exam. It's virtually impossible to do well and to get prepared on all the topics. You say, okay, these are the things that are most important, and I'm going to really, really focus hard on that. So that's kind of it.
It's the airline business is about a billion $1 ideas.
Yeah.
कहाँ से आते हैं? How do you get these ideas? कौन लोग होते हैं जो ये सबसे ज़्यादा अच्छे ideas देते हैं?
Every employee. You have to create a culture where you get these ideas all the time from your frontline staff, right? Because
They're the closest to the customer.
They are the closest to the customer. They understand the operations. They observe and understand the operations the closest on a day-to-day basis. At the same time, there are somebody will be able to plan a route network more efficiently so that there is not so much wastage. Somebody will look at how to do catering better. Somebody will look at how to land the airplane in a certain way so that it saves fuel. Somebody says that, how do we increase safety? Because with running a safer and safer operation means you have less and lesser number of cancellations and maintenance events. That again leads to a cost saving. So that's why I'm saying that it has to be a cultural aspect. It cannot be that you run one special project or that you set up a group of people and say, okay, these people are going to be now responsible for cost saving. And the same thing goes with, by the way, in many other aspects. You can say that, or one should, create a work culture which is friendly, which is welcoming, and so on and so forth. So if that we saw and you want to create a great place to work, that cultural aspect is more important than having one person or 10 people or 50 people who are in some task force and it becomes their responsibility. Creating a great place to work, creating a safe organization, safe operations, creating a customer-oriented, product, or creating a cost-conscious culture. All of these things have to be deeply cultural, have to be second nature to every employee of the company.
I can't agree more on that. But there are people who want to build organizations such that. Give me 3 actionable steps to ingrain that thing into the culture. That anybody who's building a next organization can ingrain this. Because we can't agree more on that. How do we do that? How do a 25-year-old thinking to building something new can ingrain that culture in his organization?
The very first is that what you really talk about and concentrate on a day-to-day basis? Or are you only worried about how do I increase revenue? How do I get a brand ambassador? How do I chase social media? How do I chase valuation? How do I chase an investor? If that's what you will do, then that's what the company will do. Right? If you are not going to spend time talking to employees, if you're not going to spend time talking to customers, and you only want to show a revenue growth at whatever cost, and you're only worried about what the investor, how to charge an investor, how to increase valuation, then that's what will happen, right? as a listed company CEO, I don't know, I can't remember how many days I would have looked at what is the Indigo stock price. It's irrelevant. It was irrelevant to me, right? Even though it had an impact on my personal earnings, it was irrelevant to me as the CEO of the airline. I had to make sure that I was focused on, are my employees happy and are they being able to put in the best? Do I have my ears and eyes available to them? Am I listening to what the customer is saying?
Right.
Am I making sure that I create or lead a cost-conscious culture so that the investor's money does not get I mean that where you're acting as the custodian of the capital of investors, and therefore when you say what can one do, the very first is that what you attach importance to? Is that what you talk about? And is that what you're spending time on? And the second part is, in your everyday communication, is that something that you focus on? And the third is, when people do something well there, do you reward them for that? Or do you say, that's okay, but tell me how much did I sell tomorrow? Right?
Acknowledging and then appreciating that and bringing.
Yeah. So if you're running a restaurant,
which you do, by the way.
And which I do also. If you are focused on just seeing how many plates got sold, then your workers, your colleagues, that's all they will do.
Focus on.
Right. But if you're going to not ask, did we get the right ingredients? Was the kitchen clean? Was the staff friendly?
Was the customer delighted?
Yeah. Then, and then when somebody does that, reward that person, recognize that person. I think those are the three things.
So as a customer, it's very important for me, and it's given that अगर मैं कोई चीज book कर रहा हूँ, तो it should be on time. And we want to understand, what does it take for an airline company to be on time? Why was that other people were not able to do that, were not able to focus that? And what did you do differently? Such ki, Indigo was awarded as one of the most on-time airline, and then you replicated that thing to Akasa.
Actually, I disagree with you a little bit in the sense that you're right that people expect that, but what happens is, when customers talk, the chances are that the customer will talk about, that airline, they gave me a blanket also. They gave me a newspaper also. Headphones, this, that. So the airline starts thinking, the customer actually wants this. So let me now focus on the blanket and then the free gift and the pen and this and that. Now human beings, they can't concentrate on 50 different things at the same time. So then that team will start focusing on the pen and the headphones and the color and the coffee and the chocolate mousse and all of that. On the other hand, the customer may not talk about on time, cleanliness, etc. So somebody else figures out that actually, the customer may be talking about this, but what they're really paying for is something else. And that's the difference between wants and needs. Customers want a lot of things. They don't want to pay for it.
Especially in India.
Anywhere in the world. So therefore, but needs are something that the customer will pay for. Okay. Needs are, is it a safe airline? Is it an on-time airline? Is it flying to the places that I need to fly to? Is it offering a fare that I can afford? Is it a friendly airline? Is the customer service good? Customer service means the human interaction. The interaction on the website, the interaction on the call center, the ease of using the app. These are the customer touch points. And airlines and businesses which are able to focus on that, gradually after a period of time, become the product of choice for those customers. even though the customer is talking about newspaper and blanket and headphones and whatnot.
So for people who are building businesses, how can they differentiate between what the customer need and what does the customer want? And what will be that one thing that the customer will pay for? What's the insight there?
It's actually quite simple. The difference between wants and needs is literally what the customer is willing to pay for. So if you have two airlines, and if both of them are offering different things, you'll have to see. You got one airline says, I'm going to fly my planes on time, I'm going to fly my planes safe, I'm going to give good food that you're going to pay for, a good seat cushion so that you're comfortable while sitting, I'll have a very friendly service, and I'm going to charge you 5,000 rupees. Okay. Another airline says, I'll try, but I can't promise I'll be the best on time. But I'll give you the best blanket, I'll give you the best TV entertainment and this, that, the other. But instead of 5,000 rupees, I'm going to charge you 7,000 rupees. Customer is not going to pay 2,000 rupees extra for that TV entertainment and the coffee and the separate check-in counter if that airline is not on time, that airline. But that goes in any business, even in the hotels business. Why Oyo caught the imagination of people? Oyo came in and said, this is a very fragmented market in the affordable segment of the market. There is a need that the consumer does not know when they land at a new city or a new airport, at a new bus terminus, railway station. They don't know which hotel, which guest house, what will they get, how much will they charge, and so on and so forth. And whether it's the porter, the coolie, the rickshaw driver, or the hotel receptionist, there's no guarantee. There is no uniformity. Oyo came in and said, you land in a new city, open the app, we'll tell you where the hotel is. We'll tell you what the tariff is. It'll be a clean room, it will have this kind of a bed, it will have air conditioning, it will have Wi-Fi. If you're not happy with it, there is a call center number you can call. And for what? 900,000, 1,100 rupees, which is the price of 2 or 3 cups of coffee. So it is that consistency where when the other hotels were either building these massive grand palaces or really crummy guest houses with, this company came in and said, I'm just going to democratize it. I'm going to standardize it. That what I'm promising is what I will deliver. I'm not promising a 5-star hotel, but neither am I charging you for a 5-star hotel. At least that's the effort. That's the business model. Right? Again, understanding, will the customer pay for, you're going on a short trip to another city. You're a student, you're a backpacker, you're a trader, you're a businessman. You're coming into Delhi, you're going to spend a few hours in the evening, you have to stay the night, you have some meetings in the morning tomorrow, and you'll go. If you get a clean, safe, reliable room with these basic amenities, and you can get it at affordable 1,500 rupees, you're going to go for that and not for the hotel where you're going to pay for the spa and the 5 restaurants, etc., because you won't have the time to utilize it. Makes sense? Yeah.
Walking, so it's a hard business, right? There are always a dependency on a lot of things, dependency of pilots and stuff. Walkie, one of the cruelest period of crisis which you faced during your time at Indigo or at Akasa, and what was the situation? How did you react? And how were you able to, walk past? Walk me through that.
Well, when I first took on the role in 2008 itself was an extremely difficult time, because this was 2008 recession. The world was going into its deepest economic crisis that the world had ever seen. And fuel had touched $146 a barrel, which is the highest fuel prices that the world had ever seen. Lehman Brothers collapsing, and the banks were failing. Airlines were going bankrupt. And Indigo had not made money. Employees were nervous. So that was itself quite a crisis. Then later, when Kingfisher collapsed, other airlines were having their troubles. Again, the gloom and doom of what's happening in the airline business. Or for that matter, the aftermath of COVID, etc. When we were thinking of launching Akasa, where when you're trying to launch this idea, people are still recovering from what's happened in the travel business because of COVID and the pandemic. I think those were some of the key crisis times.
What were some learnings you had from the airlines business, which you kind of replicated into the hospitality business when we were the CEO of Oyo?
And lots of things. The very first is to identify what is the product you're selling. To have crystal clear clarity, you have to be clear. Let's say that airline analogy, that are you going to be selling the best food or are you going to be selling the best, most reliable operations? So having clarity on what you're going to focus on. Second is, how do you... Airline business is a very process-oriented business. So how do you take that and build processes around all the things that you're offering to your customers so that they become more and more consistent, reliable. You're doing the same thing over.
Give an example of one process like that.
Everything from how much time is it going to take for you to check in a customer at a hotel reception, right? And the airlines, your counter is open, your counter will close, your flight will take off. So there's a process. There's a process as to how fast you're going to check in a customer. In a hotel, one can get lazy. It's like, okay, sometimes I take 2 minutes, sometimes I take 5, sometimes I can take 10, sometimes I can take 7. How do you convert that into a process so that the throughput is faster? Customers don't have to wait. They've just come up from a flight. They're just checking out and going on a flight. How do you make that? So that process orientedness. The third is revenue management, right? That how do you make sure that just like airlines offer very affordable fares, very low fares at certain times, it might be a middle of the night, it might be something. How do you bring those elements into the hospitality business where you say that
demand and supply?
Demand and supply. In the hospitality business today, there's a lot of focus on food delivery, right? So just like you look at packaging of food in the airlines, where you can't do massive trays and this, that, and the other. But the packaging is such that it should look appealing, it should be well branded, it should be easy to eat. So can you do a similar thing when you're sending food from the restaurant to somebody's home, right? Okay. So those are the...
What did you learn from Ritesh when you were working at Oyo?
Ritesh is somebody who is, there's just actually he's special. There are many, many, many things to learn from Ritesh. The very first is that Ritesh is constantly evolving. And every 6 months, every year, you will see a newer, better version of Ritesh. Where he'll absorb, he'll observe, he'll take feedback, and he will just kind of, work on something, and he'll constantly keep evolving as a person. That is, I think, something which is a great quality in Ritesh. The second is that he is extremely focused on what he does, and that means that he will never come unprepared into a meeting. He will never come unprepared into a discussion. So even if it is something that he's taking the review, he's sitting on something, he would spend hours and hours preparing for it. I hear a lot when people say, oh, I'll drop out of college, and, or I did not go to college, and Ritesh did not go to college, and therefore there is no need to go to college. Ritesh did not go formally to college, but Ritesh probably goes through college every 2 months because of how much information and he consumes and how much he observes other people and learns from them, right? And constantly evolves himself.
Give me an example so that we can replicate the same. We can learn.
It's very simple. I did history in my
graduation
undergrad. I did law after that. But I am ever curious, and I'm a student even today. So I like to learn from a manufacturing business. I like to learn from a shop. I like to learn from someone who's working in the farms. And so college is only a structured way to give you an education about certain things. That should not be the end of your journey to learn. And therefore, Ritesh is constantly absorbing and learning. So, if someone has gone to college today and has graduated from some very fancy engineering school or business school or university, they should not think that now just because they have a degree in a certain subject, that makes them a better engineer. It's like going to the Mahabharata and saying that, look, Karna was a better fighter and a better warrior than many of the Pandavas, right? Even though he did not formally step into the grounds or the ashram of Dronacharya, right? Though, will we say that the Pandavas were better warriors just because they went to formally to the ashram of Gurukul of Dronacharya, or will we say that Karna was the one who was a better warrior? Right?
Same with ATM,
right? Exactly. So I think that is the mistake that sometimes people make. The formal college degree is just another milestone in a lifelong journey of education and learning. Not having that degree does not mean you're not good enough, and having that degree does not make you any more superior than anybody else.
So you're a fan of agility in businesses.
Yes.
And you don't like the word of hustle.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell us one of your most favorite examples of agility in business which you which gave you goosebumps or which made you कि यार agility सीखनी है तो इस बंदे से सीखनी है, ऐसे सीखनी है, इस situation से सीखनी है, इस business से सीखनी है.
No, we see it all around. I am actually not somebody who gets inspired by one thing or one person. I think inspiration is all around us. You look at the game of cricket, let's say, right? Because that's something that is relatable to everybody. Sachin Tendulkar had been playing cricket for 25 years, primarily a batsman. His game changed, his fitness changed, his approach to bowlers changed as the competitor changed, as the playing field changed.
Constant evolution, right?
Okay. And that is agility. That is agility because you're constantly evolving. That is not hustle. कि इस गेम में ना ये कर लेंगे तो ये हो जाएगा, एक शॉट मार देंगे तो जीत जाएंगे, but you can't replicate it the next time. If you have by chance hit a shot and that you suddenly say, hey, this was interesting, but then take that and go back to the nets and
Practice the same thing.
practice it so that it becomes
Your
an arrow in your quiver. It becomes part of your armory. So hustle, I feel, is like, putting band-aids here or there. Rather than stepping back and saying, no, what do I need to do to make sure that I do far better the next time? Satya Nadella, when he came into Microsoft, right? He came into Microsoft, or not came in, but he had been in Microsoft for a while. But he became the CEO of Microsoft. He came in at a very difficult time for Microsoft. Microsoft was not being seen as the place to work. It was talent was looking at the Facebooks of the world and the Apples of the world. The business of Microsoft, buying mobile phone and so on and so forth. It was a little bit all over the place. Stock was not doing well. And he came in and just focused back and said, okay, what do I need to do differently? How do I reinvent the business so that I can build a Microsoft of the next generation?
What did he do specifically?
I think,
According to you?
I think it's again going down to seeing what is the purpose of the business? What is the impact that Microsoft is having? How are they playing a role in the life of the consumer? How can they work with the rest of the ecosystem rather than trying to do everything themselves? And I think that is agility. That is not a band-aid that this year, to move the stock price up or to make the revenue grow, let me just do this and then we'll see what happens later. It was not a temporary thing. It was reinventing the business by itself. Right? It's like if today Akasa has to capture the hearts and the minds of the Indian consumer, it cannot be a cheap gimmick here or there. It has to be a consistent product where somebody feels, actually the seat is more comfortable. Actually, they have in-seat power so that, I can continue to work because this is the new India. Right? They actually have a device holder. I don't really need an entertainment screen, but as long as they have a device holder, I anyway download stuff on my phone and I watch it. Right? They actually are providing a customer experience that is friendlier than others. They're actually on time. Right? It is not that they're giving a free headphone and saying, come and fly us. Likewise, when Indigo in 2010 began to really go after and chase the corporate travel market in India, they did not go and say, here is, if you're a businessman, here is a 5% discount or a 10% discount. They said, no, we come up with a corporate travel program, which will give you unlimited number of changes on how many times you can cancel, how many times you can change your flight. The food is already built into your fare and so on and so forth. They approached it in a way that without adding a business class, without adding a separate check-in counter, without adding a separate red or blue carpet, without adding a loyalty program, they went and captured the corporate travel market. Right? It was not a one-time event.
I get it.
Right? Or it was not a band-aid here or there.
So walk me to day zero of Akasa Airlines. Kiske dimag mein idea aaya tha?
This was Vinay's idea. Absolutely Vinay's idea. And
how did you meet Vinay for the first time?
I met Vinay actually through a very close common friend of ours, the actor Rahul Bose. Rahul is a classmate of Vinay's from school. Rahul is a friend of mine. So Rahul Bose is the one who introduced both of us. Vinay had just come in and joined as the CEO of Jet Airways. And even when we were competitors, it was so obvious that Vinay was just a cut above the rest. He was extremely honorable. He was somebody who he's just a phenomenal guy. He's not just a nice guy. He's extremely intelligent. He's just, integrity is like, a second nature to him. What he believes in is what he will stand for. He will never take the easy path out. Whatever is right, he has to do that, right? So it was very, very clear. So obviously, I developed a huge amount of respect for Vinay.
While he was a competitor.
Whenever once or twice that I had reached out to him, where there was some competitive action, there's an advertisement that came out taking the name of Jet Airways and berating Indigo.
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately checked and he says, I can't believe we would have done this. And if it had been, I don't have any knowledge of this, but let me just find out. And within minutes, I think, or within an hour, he got back and said that this is actually nothing to do with us. This is not our ad at all. Somebody somewhere in the social media is using this thing. Similarly, there was something else, and the conversation was going on, the negotiations or something was going on for a long period of time, and I just sent him a message saying that is there a real interest in doing this, or are we just kind of wasting time, etc. And again, immediately he came up with an answer. So it was very obvious that he's just somebody who's incredibly smart, but also just integrity is really flowing in every blood vessel of his. So that's how I met Vinay, and I developed that huge amount of respect. It was totally Vinay's idea to launch a new airline, and he called me in the middle of the lockdown, and that's how we started talking. And then Rakesh Jhunjhunwala reached out as well.
How was the story of Rakesh sir coming into the picture? Did you pitch him? Did he came to you? How was the story? Set it at first for us.
No, Vinay is the one who reached out to RJ. But RJ knew me from the Indigo days because he was an anchor investor in
the IPO.
The Indigo IPO. So RJ reached out to me and said that there is something that we want to talk to you about.
So Vinay sir pitched to Rakesh sir that he wants to...
No, so Vinay pitched to RJ. RJ separately reached out to me. When I spoke to RJ, within 10 minutes, I said, are you talking about this idea that Vinay has? He said, yes. I said, Vinay's already reached out to me, and that's how we...
So the universe was conspiring. So tell me one thing, when you're coming from Indigo, when he's coming from Jet Airways, don't you sign some NDA in order to stay away from the same industry? Because a lot of folks... That was over. Got it.
I left Indigo in 2018. Akasa started only in 2020.
But there, you could not have started this just after leaving it.
But I was doing Oyo. I was doing a whole bunch of things. I'd gone to Oyo, then I was at Fabindia. So there are lots of other things.
We would have loved to learn from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala sir. But now there is no way, but we can always learn from people who have, spent some time with him. Can you break us down? If we have to learn 5 things, a young person from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala sir, what those 5 things would be? And how was your interaction? How was meeting for the first? You've covered meeting for the first time on some other podcast, but tell him some other things that we can learn from him. What made him special?
What made him special was, first of all, again, please remember, very detail-oriented. Okay, so...
and when you see, give us a specific example so that we can...
because I see this all the time, right? People say, one should invest in green energy. But when you ask that person why, that person will not have any idea.
Because that's a borrowed...
just,
understanding.
And that happens to young entrepreneurs also. That, I think we should do something in sustainability. Or we should do something in, consumer tech. But
when you ask why,
so one is that as an investor, when it's your money, and especially when it is somebody else's money, one has to know what they are saying. So always, if someone asks you why, you should have a very detail-oriented answer, not just because you feel that's a good idea. Second is, like again, I had mentioned earlier, is a ability to respect frugality, to make sure that, to know that, yes, these people are really, focused on creating a low cost structure. Yet, that does not mean that you do not invest in some of the best equipment and in some of the best teams. One of the things that Rakesh, RJ used to ask all the time is, what are we doing about the mental health of our employees? All the time, every meeting, right? So this is not something that, it's a nice thing to say in a newspaper that, we should be focused on the mental health of employees.
This is internally you're talking about this.
Yeah, internally in a business review, planning an airline, he would have constantly asked that. Okay. Third is backing management teams. The same thing that you asked me about Ritesh Agarwal, the same thing I'll say about RJ. Tremendous amount of respect for whoever are the professional management team that are running any business.
And
whether it is Titan, whether it is Metro Shoes, whether it is Akasa, huge amount of respect.
How do you show that respect? How do you know that?
By listening. By listening and you and I want to again emphasize, being a boss has nothing to do with bossing around. Right? And therefore, that respect comes from, you will obviously engage, you will have different points of view, but do you differ with each other with respect, or you are just saying, because I'm giving you money, now you have to do this?
So how do you respect someone by, actually differentiating? You have a difference of opinion, and still how do you respect the other person?
Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to that, you will still have to go with what the professional expert is saying. Right? And it could be, when I say professional expert, does not mean it could be a promoter of a company. But when the promoter of the company has spent all his or her time in that business and they are able to come back to you with logical answer, there are no guarantees of success. But you have to respect that this person must know something, and it's that person's idea. It is that founder's idea. It is that founder's company. You are only the investor.
Right.
This is not, we could not have done what we are doing without the constant support and encouragement of RJ. But RJ would have been the first person to say, this is not my airline. Yours. This is whoever is the founder. Metro Shoes is not Rakesh Jhunjhunwala's company. Right. So therefore, that is that. And the third very, very important element about RJ was that he was extremely grounded and relatable. He had a larger than life persona, but when he would relate to people, he would relate to people who would understand what they're saying. He would want to really listen to your story, what you like, what you don't like, and so on and so forth. So I found him extremely relatable.
And what was the gap in the market that you saw that you wanted to fill with Akasa? Low cost air serving.
The India is a country of 1.4 billion people. It has 400 planes, 500 planes.
In entirety, all the competitors, right?
And one airline in the United States, which is not even the largest airline in the United States, Southwest Airlines, probably has 1,000 airplanes. Right. And some of the larger airlines have thousands of airplanes. So, and a country of 300 million people has 7,000 commercial airplanes. So there's it doesn't take no many rocket science to see that. And on top of that, Go Air is going bust, so Jet Airways is going bust, other airlines are suffering. So the gap is so large that it is impossible not to see the gap. It is impossible not to see the gap.
So how different, what were some learnings from Indigo that you kind of replicated in Akasa, and what were certain things that you did very differently?
I think it's a mix of both things. So, I mean, it's not just Indigo. You learn from observing great airlines around the world, whether it is the customer service of Singapore Airlines or Qatar Airways, whether it is the efficiency of Ryanair, whether it is the longevity of Southwest Airlines, whether it is the product of JetBlue, whether it is the network planning of Emirates, whether it's the management team of Delta. So all for that matter, like I said, where you look at other businesses, other industries, from Starbucks to Lululemon to whatever. I mean, you keep looking and learning from others. So there will be many things that we would have drawn inspiration from somewhere else,
and then copied shamelessly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there'll be and you take that and you try to constantly improve. So I think it's a mix of that.
आपके पास idea आ गया. You have the best teams now. What do you do first? You apply for the license. Do you hire the pilots? Do you train them? Do you order the planes? What's the step-by-step process of starting your own airline?
Yes, of course, you have to apply for the license. And that's a very long process.
How much time did it took for you to get the license?
We got it one of the fastest within a matter of probably 6 to 8 months, because we were just prepared. So on one side is the license, but while you're applying for the license, on the other side, you are beginning to build the team. You're looking at the airplane order. You're looking at which airports that you can land in. Your pilots take a long period of time to resign from their current employers and then come to you. So convincing them. So it's a lot of these things, getting lessors to support you with financing the first few airplanes. So it's a lot of different things that come together.
Market में, when you're trying to open up a new airline, the demand of pilots is constant. जैसे आपने खोली अचानक से pilots तो नहीं होंगे. So it's obviously you have to get pilots from other competitors. How did you approach that problem of generating the demands, the supply of pilot?
No, but remember a couple of airlines had gone bankrupt also. So there were people who had a lot of experience, very mature pilots who did not have jobs because the other airlines had gone bankrupt. But over a long period of time, you also have your program to create new pilots, to upgrade them to captains, and that is a constant stream. So you're not constantly hiring from other airlines.
I see. So I was just searching a photo of yours 10 years ago. And there is a stark difference between you then and now. At what point in your life you figured, this is not I want to look like maybe after, 10 years down the lane and stuff. I'm not able to find that, but it's there on your Instagram. I had to, dive deep into that.
No,
what does it take to have a body like yours? And this is now completely of the in the sense of the business talk. But
no, I think it was not about how I look. It was just again, it's a journey of trying to be fit, and again creating a discipline around that. So finding the time to exercise, finding the time to and any fitness journey is all about discipline. It's about consistency and discipline, just as businesses. So you have to fix a routine. You have to do the same thing over and over again. You have to be patient. You have to be careful about what you're eating. You have to be careful about how much you're exercising. So it's almost like a parallel, growing a business from scratch and trying to do it is all about consistency, routine, discipline, right? Rigor. Fitness is also like that.
You're a foodie too.
I am a foodie.
And how is that? You love food, you eat food, and then still maintain to have a body like that, a shape like that. How do you do that?
I think I always say that I exercise more so that I can eat more.
But let's say I want to look like you. 10 years down the lane? What are certain things, what are certain habits that I need to ingrain in myself from the age of 20? Because after talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, one thing when they asked about regret, kya regret hai? So they say we did not treat our body like temple. And we should have done that while we were in early 20s. So what are some habit changes that I need to make from now, or the young folks need to do that?
So I think, look, first is just there has to be some amount of physical activity every day, pretty much, right? So you've got to spend that hour, all right? And if somebody says, "Okay, I don't have the hour to spend on yourself," you have to steal that hour from somewhere else. You have to steal that hour from drinking. You have to steal that hour from sleeping. You have to steal that hour from, I don't know, I mean, whether it's staring into your laptop or whatever it is, right? So you have to make that out for yourself. So the second is that, look, to be generally watchful about what you're eating. There isn't anything that I do not eat, whether it is ice cream or cake or pizza or whatever it is. But if I've indulged in that, the next day I'll try to cut back a little bit. The next day I'll try to exercise a little bit more, etc. Right. And the third most important thing is for it to be a part of your routine, for it to be a part of your consistent routine. So irrespective of when I'm traveling, where I'm traveling, there's always a road and there are always sneakers. Irrespective of when I get back, I always exercise in the morning. So that routine and discipline is very, very important. And more than aesthetics and looks, focus on fitness, the rest of it will come automatically.
And what are some goals for you that you have fixed for yourself at this point, at this stage?
I ran, I can run a half marathon, but I want to run a full. Last summer, I started getting to swimming about 1.2 kilometers. I want to swim a mile. I did get to a mile once, but do that a little bit more. Yeah. Go back to riding a bike a little bit. I mean, bike as a bicycle a little bit more. So things like that, So, but again, just like in business, in fitness also, you have to just keep setting yourself small goals, right? Okay, I've got to do this, then I've got to do this, then I've got to do this, and it could be like, okay, I want to run 5 kilometers, but I want to run 5 kilometers in 30 minutes. Right. I want to do 100 push-ups, but I want to do 100 push-ups in, 4 sets or 3 sets or maybe 1 set. So that's how you just keep pushing yourself.
Or you are also an advanced open water scuba diver. How was the experience? What did you learn? Because so we were talking to someone and he mentioned कि यार जब मेरे को scuba diving करनी थी जब मैं young था तो मेरे पास पैसे नहीं थे. And I did have a lot of energy, but I did not have money. But right now, so he's a big shot at some investment bank. It was बहुत सारा हुआ है. लेकिन there are certain parts of the world, because of my age, I have lots of money. I can probably take 50 other folks with me, but I don't have time. I don't have energy and I don't have health to do that. I'm restricted to do that.
Yeah. So, that's a very important point. You said, now, what do you tell yourself as a 22-year-old? I think what you have to tell yourself as a 22-year-old, or I'm going to turn 49 this year, is that if you have health and if you have the opportunity, your body allows it and your health allows it, then don't wait for that, right? Try treat it as if you want to go see a monument, if you want to go see this thing, and it does not have to be expensive.
Yeah.
Go do it, right? Don't save it for later. For me, scuba diving was extremely important from a different perspective, because when I grew up, I was afraid of the water. I learned swimming only when I was 24, 25. Right? So for me, scuba diving or to get licensed as an advanced open water scuba diver was an interesting way to say, here is something that I used to always shy away from. But today, for me to be able to swim a mile, for me to be able to scuba dive, is a little lesson to myself that if you put your heart and soul to it, if you put your mind to it, then you can break through those walls.
So there are so many awards that you have, accolades that you have won, right? whether it's low cost leadership award, Fortune 40 under 40, stuff like that. But what was the most special award? And I'm assuming that was that with the one that you got from the president of France?
That was special because my children were there with me, right? So, but frankly, I'll tell you, the real awards is if a colleague of mine who has worked with me says something nice to me, or nice about me, even especially if they are not working with me. Or let's say if I walk into an airplane today and somebody's, whether it's at the airport or something, they give me a little bit of some note.
Yeah,
I think those are more important.
Got it. So tell me, so because you mentioned colleague, so I was, as a part of research, we spoke to a lot of folks that as far as जितनी भी हमारी reach है, हम कोशिश करते हैं हाथ पैर फैलाते जिससे भी बात करने का मौका मिले. तो आपके colleague ने बताया there is a story that you always tell about packing others' parachute. What's that story? Please tell us.
Yeah, I tell the story a lot. So this is a true story. This is based in the Vietnam War. There was a U.S. Navy Top Gun pilot called Charles Plum. Captain Plum was a very accomplished fighter pilot, bomber pilot. So on one of his sortie missions, his plane got shot, and fortunately he had a parachute, so he ejected. He was captured, and he was captured as a prisoner of war. So after a while, when the Americans finally, were able to recover their POWs,
Prisoners of war.
Prisoner of war. He came out, went on to build a very successful career, and then he retired. And then one day he was sitting at a restaurant in a small town, in a small restaurant, and he was sitting with his wife, and there's this man who comes up to him and he says, "Excuse me, but aren't you Charles Plum?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "You were with the Navy, right?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "And you used to fly off the USS Kitty Hawk." And then Captain Plum said, I'm really sorry, but I can't recognize you. I'm not being able to place you." He says, "And you flew off on such and such date, and you got shot down over Nam, and you were captured." He says, "Yeah, but I must be getting old. I'm unable
Not
to
even recognize him.
He said, "But you don't know me." He says, "Okay, but then how would you know me?" He says, "I'm the guy who packed your parachute that day." And that's when Captain Plum starts saying that how many times do we think of all the people who are packing our parachute every day? Here is somebody who probably was a sailor. I was the big fighter pilot, people saluting me. This guy probably slept in the hold, woke up, packed parachutes all day, went back to sleep, right? And I had no idea who he was. He didn't know me. But he packed my parachute that day. And in our lives, there are so many people who pack our parachute every day, because of whom we are the heroes who we are, because of whom we get the recognition that we do. In my case, the tens of thousands of colleagues who make me look good, right? It's your loved ones, your family members, parents, it's people who have made sacrifices because of who you are. And that's why I think just like Plum had to have gratitude and be grateful for that man who did not know him but packed his parachute that day, I'm extremely grateful to all these people who pack a parachute every day.
Crazy. That's so insightful. So we are at the end. I'll respect your time. There are quick questions, 10 questions, 30 seconds each that you need to, please would be grateful that you can answer. What's the cheapest way to book a air flight ticket? What's the handle?
Book early.
Anything else?
Just book early, avoid the peak times, but that's it.
Got it. What are certain times when you felt...
And book on the website, airline website.
So you get past all the commissions and stuff. What were certain times when you felt most lucky?
I feel that so many times, because I wasn't the best student in class. I didn't go to the best college. I didn't go to engineering school or anything, but somehow I've got all these opportunities that I have. So yeah, I have to say, and I get so much love and affection from people, despite being nowhere close to being perfect. People tolerate me, people forgive me, people give me chances. Absolutely.
So if you were not running Akasa and Homage and all the other things, what would you be doing?
Well, I don't run Akasa. That's simple. I think I would be probably. I would love to teach history.
Teach history. What's the fascination behind the subject?
Because understanding where you came from helps us understand who we are, and then kind of gives you an insight of what we can be.
What are certain things that you give that gives you real pleasure, real happiness?
I think.
And take your time.
I think it's just being around people, seeing somebody else do something where I may have played some role in bringing a smile to their face on that day. It could be something personal, it could be something professional, just making that person smile, making that person feel special. I think that gives me the most smiles.
What is one thing that you want your children to learn from you? I'm sure there are so many things that you tell them, but the theory of everything होती है ना, एक चीज समझिए तो बाकी सारी चीज सॉर्ट हो जाएगी.
I think it's what I learned from my father, which is to have humility, to understand that you do not know everything, and the respect that you see in others and observe that. I think my children should learn much more from many other people, but that's probably one thing.
If you have to predict one thing about future, what that thing would be?
That's that one has to constantly evolve, right? And that as basic as that sounds, that the future will constantly evolve, but the basic fundamentals of what are dear to human beings, which is love, respect, which is I think those will not change. And as long as you can stick to that, then the rest of it is kind of superficial.
What are certain books that had most impact on your life? Like, I know you have a huge library.
Yeah.
You have to pick 2 or 3 books. What that would be?
Again, there isn't 1 or 2 books. I really think that I draw inspiration from movies and stories and books, and so it's difficult for me to name 1 or 2 books.
Certain movies that you recently watched and you kind of inspired by.
I think 12th Fail was something which was very interesting recently. I think the especially nowadays there's such fantastic films being made. But even films like In Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes.
There are just so many. I'm a big movie buff, so
Got it. They say कि if you're the sum of 5 people you surround yourself with, if you have to consciously design those 5 people, who those 5 people would be in your life, and these people may not be the current folks. There can be people from history. And it's the current.
It's class teachers. It's school teachers. It is parents. It is my children. It is close colleagues, close friends. My ex-wife. All of these people have, everyone has contributed something. If anything, I have not been able to absorb and adapt everything that they had to contribute.
What is the role that you want to play in the life of your children?
I hope I am able to, support them, be a better listener, and be able to support them in whatever are their pursuits, where they can realize their true potential. And that has nothing to do with what job they do or how much they earn. It is that whether they are able to explore and express as many different things as possible.
What is one thing that you're contrarian about?
On one side, I say be focused, be detail oriented, and on the other side, I am constantly
Doing so many
50 different things.
How do you manage yourself while आप context shift कैसे करते हो? 15 different things. You run a restaurant, you run a investment thing,
I'm reasonably good at compartmentalizing.
How do you do that? Any tip for that?
Just the same thing that I was saying in the beginning.
Mhm.
Stay present in that particular thing. Like when you're discussing something, when you're listening to something. Like,
Is there a particular thing that helps you stay present in that moment?
No, just try to train your mind to say, okay, if you're asking somebody a question, then be really interested in that answer. If you're listening to something, then be really interested in listening to it.
Where do you buy your spectacles from?
I got a few free from Lenskart.
Okay.
Yeah, and but yeah, then there is this other store in New York City which I think.
When are you learning to fly an airplane?
I don't know.
Is it even in your bucket? Because
It
you
is.
know horse riding, you know scuba diving.
It's on my bucket list, but I don't know when I'll get the time to take 2-3 months off to be able to do that in a focused manner. But yeah, definitely on the bucket list.
Thanks a ton, a million times for doing this, sir.
Absolutely my pleasure.
I learned a lot, and hopefully a lot of folks will learn a lot of things.